What is good, my people? My name is Dr. EJ and welcome back to my channel, Wavy Doc. Okay, bless. So yeah, I'm kind of back with another kind of advice / top tips video. But this time I'm kind of aiming it more at people who are in the final year of medical school, who are going to be in the final year of medical school. Obviously something I've done quite recently, and just kind of a few tips that I kind of like looking back, I wish I'd known to kind of help people kind of navigate through all the different things that you kind of have to get through in final year. Because as I mentioned before, it can be quite a busy year. All right. So before I kind of carry on, I do obviously want to say that obviously all medical schools are different. But essentially like the content and things that you do have to kind of get done by the end of medical school are essentially the same across all medical schools, essentially, especially like UK medical schools, if you want to work as a junior doctor within the UK. But obviously I can only speak about my experience, so I'm going to kind of be going through kind of the things that I had to go through as a final year medical student at King's College London. But if there are certain parts of the video that are not applicable to you or things that you've already done, obviously kind of ignore those, and anything that you do find useful, fantastic, obviously, and take that on board. All right, so yeah, brilliant. Let's kind of get straight into it. So like I said, I'm going to be kind of focusing on kind of my experience in kind of as a final year medical student at King's College London. So throughout the year, I kind of had to do a few things, kind of starting with the FPAS application to kind of apply for a job as a junior doctor in the UK. Then we also had the SJT, finals, kind of written examination, final OSCE / practical examinations in final year as well. Then there's also a prescribing examination, and then you also have like your elective and things like that they kind of have to get through. So like I said, yeah, it is quite busy, and there is kind of a lot of things that you do have to kind of stay on top of as well. One main point that is kind of going to be like a running kind of point across this whole video is that time management probably is the biggest thing across the whole of final year. And I know it probably does sound quite self-explanatory because of course you would have had to manage your time really, really tightly throughout the whole of medical school. But in final year, like I said, because you have so many things and so many deadlines to kind of hit across the year and things like that, it can be quite overwhelming for some people, but if you kind of are really controlled and manage your time really, really well, then it is more than doable. All right, so the first thing I want to kind of talk about is, like I mentioned, so the FPAS application, so the foundation program application system. So this is obviously the system that you have to go through to apply and rank jobs within the UK working in the NHS. And the only thing I want to say about this is that kind of go onto the UK FPAS website, so the foundation program website, and really download the applicant's handbook, which I'm sure like all of your medical schools have told you about by now already. And in the handbook there is a kind of very, very good and clear kind of timeline across all the different dates and things that you do need to kind of keep aware of and like put into your diary, so that you know what's coming up, when to apply for the different jobs, whether that's for the foundation program, so the FPP, so the foundation priority program, or the SFP, so the specialized foundation program as well. And then obviously there's the dates in terms of kind of ranking jobs, uploading information, things like that. Other than that, if you kind of follow the applicant's handbook, kind of most of the questions you have will be answered in there. And then just really obviously sticking to those dates and make sure you're getting in things on time. Because I've heard of some like horror stories of people kind of like missing application windows and like having to take years out and apply a year late, and it's just not really a situation you want to be in just because you've kind of missed a deadline and things, especially after kind of so many years studying in medical school. So yeah, get the handbook and get all those dates into your diary. You should be fine. All right. So then the next one I'm going to talk about is the SJT. So this is the situational judgment test. So I will make a whole separate video kind of just focusing on the SJT, because you can kind of delve into a few different things in terms of like revision, what resources to use, etc, etc, etc. But just kind of like a quick overview. So the situational judgment test is kind of like an evaluation in terms of kind of assessing the kind of core values of a foundation doctor in line with the person's specification that's seen on the FPAS website. So you can kind of have a look at all of those. And it is quite an important test. I'll explain why that is shortly. But it's kind of made up of different situations that are posed to the candidate in terms, and then you kind of have to either rank different answers, rate different answers, or kind of answer multiple choice questions based on these different situations that you'll be faced with as a foundation doctor. And obviously why it is important is because obviously based on where you're kind of ranking in terms of kind of getting a score in terms of deeming your ranking for where you can apply for your jobs, half of that, so 50 points of that, is from your EPM. So depending on the decile that you place within your kind of medical school, you can score anywhere between 41 to 50 points. So that's half of it is sourced from that, and then the other 50 points are essentially made from just this SJT score. And we're not really going to dive into the politics of why that is. A lot of people kind of disagree with that, but it is just what it is. So it is a very, very important test. And what I will say about it is that just kind of start preparing from early. So kind of 2 to 3 months before you have your exams. So it's normally either in December or January. Those are the 2 examination periods. So 2 to 3 months, do kind of like one evening a week for like a couple of hours, kind of working through kind of the SJT papers online, working through the General Medical Council kind of guidelines as well, and kind of, yeah, and that should kind of help in terms of kind of like doing like once a week consistently, and then obviously picking that up nearing kind of like getting nearer to your exam as well. Okay, but again, we'll kind of dive into like a few different tips and resources and stuff in another video. All right, kind of before exams, to many people's annoyance, you also have placement that you have to go to. Unfortunately, like as final years, you kind of do have to go there, get your engagement, get your sign-offs and whatnot. But what I will say in terms of, and what I say to all kind of final year medical students who do shadow me on placement, who I do see on the wards and stuff, is that make sure you're using your time wisely, and any time that you are on the wards is useful to you and useful to your examinations. So this is before exams. So what I mean by this is kind of like seeing patients, so taking histories, examining patients, carrying out all the different examinations that you'll be examined on in your OSCEs and in your practical examinations, and obviously feeding that back and presenting that to kind of junior doctors or SHOs, consultants and things, and getting feedback is really, really important, because that is kind of like first-hand feedback and kind of like on real patients in the real world, and then you can translate that into your practical examinations as well. Also similarly with like clinical skills, if there's anything that you could be examined on in your practical examinations, try to do that whilst you're on the wards as well. And then the next really important point is that if at any point in time you do feel like your time is not being used as wisely and you aren't learning and it's not really useful, then just get out of there, kind of leave the wards, go to the library, go home, because it's within kind of this period in final year, there is something that you can always be doing that is really, really beneficial. So if you do feel like there's a switch and you've kind of really kind of maximize everything you can do on the wards for a day, for example, which it can really get to that of after ward rounds. If you've seen a couple of patients and then there's people just doing jobs, there's no point in just sitting behind someone just kind of like doing discharges and doing paperwork and things. Leave, go home, kind of take a break, and then get revising, and kind of, because there is loads and loads of things that you can be doing during this period of time. So really, really make sure all of your time that you're using really, really wisely as well. Okay. And that kind of feeds quite nicely into kind of the next point, just based on kind of revision and like examination prep as well. So again, we can make a whole different video about kind of preparing for finals, preparing for exams, revision tips and things like that. So we're not going to do that. But what I will say is that ultimately, like preparing for like your written final exams, it does boil down to the amount of time that you do put in to smart revision. And what I mean by that is that ultimately you're not going to be able to learn everything, and it can be, and the way where people do kind of get quite anxious about things when they kind of think how they're going to learn everything across from the beginning of medical school all the way up into final year. And ultimately it's not possible. It's just flat out not possible. But what you do need to do is that the things that you do learn, you have to make sure that you're learning them really, really well. So I saw a really, really good kind of quote online in saying that in thinking what are finals actually really preparing you for. And what you need to make sure is that you know the common kind of conditions and management of all the different kind of organ systems, and you know them really, really well, because you think it's the finals are meant to be preparing you for F1, not for like a consultant exam where you need to know kind of all the different proteins and this one new medication that's being used for this, and etc, etc. Maybe those could get you like the kind of top mark. So if you have got the time to really kind of get every kind of fine point, then fantastic. But to kind of get past finals, you need to make sure you know the common things, you know those really well, okay? And obviously with your revision as well, make sure that you're kind of factoring in regular breaks, to kind of allow yourself to kind of make sure that you're taking care of your mind, taking care of your body, so that you can actually, when you go back to your revision, you're actually absorbing and learning that information to the best of your ability, okay? And also make sure you also have like a revision timetable as well, because one, it helps you to kind of like mind map almost everything that you need to cover. And then there's also that kind of like self kind of gratification of crossing through or ticking through when you've kind of moved past the topic, and then you can tell yourself, well, actually I am making progress over this kind of time as well. All right. So then with OSCEs, or like practical examinations that you'll probably have in finals, the main point that I have to say on this one is that it's just practice. So with OSCEs, kind of get a group of friends, like a small group of friends, and kind of organize a session once, twice a week where you're kind of just going through all the different OSCE examinations and things that can come up. So clinical skills histories, and kind of clinical examinations as well. And the idea is that you need to do them so many times that they become like second nature to you, because in the actual OSCE, it's not going to be like just a kind of a box standard. It could be, but more time it's not. They're going to throw in a couple of curveballs. But if you've done a kind of examination so many different times, you've kind of gone through all the different presentations and things like that, then you'll be able to adapt to these different kind of situations that they do put you in. All right. But ultimately, like, kind of just loads and loads of practice, and also kind of try to practice with different people if you can as well, which I found quite useful, and which people that like I kind of speak to find quite useful as well, because when you kind of get used to kind of revising with people, you do kind of pick up bad habits in terms of like knowing that, or thinking, oh yeah, like a friend, oh he knows that already, so I'm not really gonna pick up that point, or I've seen him do it before but he's not doing it now. You kind of get a little bit complacent, whereas if you're changing the groups you're working around with, then you have different people who haven't revised with you as much, so they'll be a bit more focused on trying to give you feedback and positive feedback and constructive feedback on where you can improve as well. Okay, so that's the really best thing. Practice regularly across the week and with different people if you can as well. Okay. So the next thing is the PSA. So this is the prescribing safety assessment. So I had this in my final year also as well. And just kind of advice about this is look to your university to see if they provide any resources for you. So King's, they did provide some lectures and things to kind of go through to kind of give us everyone kind of a basis of knowledge. And there is quite a good PSA book that I will link down below to kind of just like as a foundation in kind of like kind of basic prescribing and prescribing safety as well. Obviously they do have the prescribing safety on the prescribing safety assessment website. They have the past papers, so make sure you do those a couple of times as well. I know people that just used those and they were certain and they were kind of really confident on those papers, but kind of using those and kind of other resources as well can be quite good to kind of complement each other as well. One thing I will say in terms of tips for that is that get used to kind of using the online BNF or like Medicines Complete as well, because with the PSA, time is one of the biggest factors, and you have to kind of get used to kind of looking up things, knowing how to find things quite quickly, shortcuts and things like that. And that kind of saves time in the actual examination, which is one of the main stresses that people kind of complain about. All right. Another point is that in the calculation questions as well, practice those, because the calculations often do stay the same. So if you can kind of get your head around the theory and the method, then obviously they'll change the number and change the kind of synopsis of the question. And then, but if you understand the method, then you'll be able to kind of just like manipulate those and bank those questions, those answers, and marks really easily. And then obviously you can spend more time on kind of like the bulkier kind of questions that have kind of like the larger marks that you can obtain as well. Okay. So yeah, so that's kind of writtens, OSCEs and PSA. So kind of in the post-exam period now, the only thing I would say is that chill out. Like, once you've got through exams, you can actually kind of take your foot off the pedal a little bit, because obviously up until then it's like boom, 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 in terms of kind of trying to really get yourself ready and as prepared for those exams as possible. After exams, you likely will still have placement. So for us, after exams, you had like what we call like a TTF1, so a transition to F1, where we kind of essentially shadowed an FY1 doctor to kind of understand the job a little bit. And then we also had our medical electives as well. So one thing I will say about obviously this period in time when you are on placement, still obviously make sure the time is useful, but it's different to kind of what you were doing prior to your examinations, where you're trying to do things that were going to help you in your examinations, whereas now you want to do things that are going to help you in life and actually in like working as an FY1 doctor. So I would say anything that you're kind of anxious about or you're kind of worried about in terms of working as an FY1 doctor, so whether that's like being on call, carrying bleeps, doing kind of clinical skills, cannulas, and all those kind of different things. This is a really, really good time just to kind of grab a buddy, so the F1 that is paid to be on the ward, and kind of just do their jobs with them and for them and things, and kind of get yourself used to doing what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis come August of whichever year you're going to start your FY1 job. Okay, so whether that's seeing sick patients first when they're coming on the acute take, shadowing FY1 doctors on calls, carrying their bleeps, answering their bleeps, bleeping people as well, doing cannulas, doing different kind of clinical skills, NGs, all those different kinds of skills that you'll be that you might not have done before. If you are anxious about those, then try to do those in that kind of period of time. But I'm going to say chill out, because unless you're shadowing or you're working within the hospital that you're going to be working when you kind of start FY1, there's still going to be a massive kind of learning curve and a massive kind of shock when you obviously do start F1. And unfortunately, that is just the case with everybody, because you've never worked as an FY1 doctor before, you've never worked full-time as an FY1 doctor before, and there is a lot to kind of deal with kind of in those kind of first 1 to 2 months of working as an FY1 doctor. So it is a really, really steep learning curve. So I would say kind of enjoy this period before you start working as an FY1 doctor, because once you kind of start working and you kind of get into the system as a doctor in NHS, we are in here for a very, 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 very long time. So make sure you're having fun at this period of time. Travel if you can. Obviously, I don't want anybody getting in trouble, but if it's for your electives or if you have some time before you kind of break up or for graduation and stuff, do what you want to do, have fun and enjoy yourself, okay? So that's kind of like a quick sprint through and a few tips just for people in final year. I think the last thing I will say is that obviously if you're watching this now and you are in final year, you're kind of going through the motions and you're kind of a bit stressed out or a bit anxious, just back yourself. You will be absolutely fine. This is what you've been in medical school for the past 4+ years for. You do have all the knowledge. So as long as you kind of go through the motion, you are organized with your time and you're using your time wisely, you'll be absolutely fine come exam wise, and you'll be a doctor in no time. Okay, so best of luck. So obviously other than that, just follow me on all of my social media platforms. So that is _Dr. EJ that's on Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. If you like this video, like it. Please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content. Share the video with anybody who you think will benefit from it as well. And yeah, other than that, stay wavy.